Well, thanks everyone for being here and joining. Those in back, find a seat. I think we're a full house, so you may have to scoot past those people that sit on the aisles and find a seat right in the middle if you don't want to find yourself standing here most of the morning. We're going to get underway in just a moment because we have a packed day. We are so thankful to Nevada County for opening up the fairgrounds for us here today. I was saying to someone I just was talking to, you know you're having a big meeting if it's at the fairgrounds. I think that there was an initial location elsewhere, but based on the demand of participants that wanted to be here, we moved to the fairgrounds. So big thanks to Nevada City for facilitating this. And big thanks to really all of our local partners. We've got an incredible day, followed by a reception, followed by a film festival, or at least a portion of a film festival. So lots happening here today. My name is Wade Crowfoot, and I serve as our California Natural Resources Secretary, and along with my co-chair of the task force, Jennifer Eberlein, who leads the U.S. Forest Service in California, it's truly my pleasure to welcome everybody here today. We are going to start off with a tribal blessing from Shelley Covert, who is a spokesperson of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe. Shelley, welcome.
All right. Oh, wow. If I could be louder. All right. Hamakani, Hamoya Bemi, Nishananamemi Wakamni, Lidam Lily, Yapimni, Daspa, Hedidi. Good morning. I'm Shelley Covert. I'm the spokesperson for the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe, and I'm also the executive director of our tribally guided nonprofit, CHIRP, which is the California Heritage Indigenous Research Project. And what a beautiful crowd there is this morning. It's so funny. I owe many of you an email that may not have been answered. I'll just take that opportunity real quick to say I actually have an autoresponder now on my email, which is even better than not answering somebody, is just to fakely answer. But the reason that is, you know, this work, as you all are well aware, these are not the forests that my ancestors knew. This is all new to all of us that we're working to try to remedy so that we don't have entire towns burning down. And, you know, I've been to meetings, Healthy Forest, Healthy Streams, Animal Protection. I mean, do y'all not talk to each other? And sometimes the groups stand side by side and don't necessarily speak to one another, Healthy Meadows. And, you know, this landscape really needs us. It needs our help, and as much as we need it. And if it can't be healthy, we just, like my mom always says, like the tiniest insect needs a drop of clean water to survive, and we all do. So this work is so long. I've gone to meetings and meetings and meetings, and now that everybody is here and we're all talking about it, I feel like I can kind of exit the scene a little bit. I mean, we have a little to offer. There's things like, you know, my grandpa would say, if it's bad, don't do it. Like, don't dam, don't cut, don't, you know, if it's hurting somebody else. So, but all in all, if I owe you an email, we have a very small capacity. It used to be just me. I just hired my cousin Saxon full-time with the nonprofit, hoping he's going to be able to like open the consultation letters that we get. So please keep reaching out. It's very important. Know whose tribal lands you're on. And welcome to our territory. So, Ekwa, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Shelley. Part of the journey that we're on to build wildfire resilience and restore the health of our landscapes across the state is to strengthen connections between state and federal government and tribal government and communities. And we know that tribal communities have stewarded California's forests, California's land since time immemorial. And we need to learn from this tribal stewardship. And so it's always important as we travel around the state that this task force begins with a word from our tribal partners whose ancestral lands we find ourselves on. So thanks so much, Shelley. So for those of you who don't know, this task force is all about helping California and helping communities across California build resilience to the wildfire crisis we now face. We know that California has naturally cycles of wildfire, and that's part of our environment, but we also know that we are facing unprecedented conditions across the state. A combination of a century of deferred activity across our forests to maintain ecological health of our landscapes, combined with increased temperatures and a destabilized climate from climate change, has created a perfect storm of challenge across the state. You know we have lost millions of acres of our forests to catastrophic wildfire in recent years. We have lost entire towns and communities off the map, and that many of you who are joining us from Nevada County or the foothills live in fear of wildfire season, which of course we're now still in the middle of. We have tens of thousands of heroes across the state right now, from CAL FIRE, from the U.S. Forest Service, from local mutual aid, from our tribes that are protecting us against wildfire in real time. But we also know that we can't respond our way out of this crisis. There's a lot more that we need to do proactively up front to reduce the risk of small fires becoming large, catastrophic, dangerous, deadly fires. And that's what this task force is all about. Governor Newsom put it together a couple of years ago. It is the latest iteration of a big, what we call it an interagency effort, federal government, state government, local government, tribal governments, and now this task force involves non-governmental entities as well. Resource Conservation District, land trust, lands conservancies, fire safe councils, environmental organizations, communities, local leaders. And that's what the task force is all about. It's a big inclusive group. We meet on a quarterly basis. It's focused on implementing an action plan that's available publicly. It's called the Wildfire Resilience Action Plan for the state. We're holding ourselves accountable for very specific actions that need to be taken to reduce catastrophic wildfire risk. So a lot of what you'll hear about today is the different progress that's being made with the focus on the Sierra Nevada and understanding how we can support the work that's happening across the state. I can tell you that the work that we need to do is not a centrally planned activity from Sacramento or Washington, D.C. It's all about local communities understanding the priorities that you have to reduce wildfire risk and restore forest health. And it's all about us bringing resources and removing barriers for you to get these projects done. I'm really excited that there are over 1,000 projects across the state, wildfire resilience projects, underway from funding that was appropriated by our state leaders last year. We have over $1 billion working their way through the system that are turning into real projects to protect communities and restore the environment. But more on that in a little bit. I want to turn to Jennifer Eberlein right now, who is my co-chair, to talk a little bit about what's been happening at recent task force meetings. I imagine some of us here today, and I should mention there are a few hundred of us in person here today and several hundred more watching on a live stream over the internet. And I imagine some folks follow the work of the task force, but others, this is the first time. And given that we've been meeting in different places and on different topics, if you would, Jen, let us know what's been happening recently with the task force to put some context on the discussions we'll have today.
I sure can. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, great. And Shelley, you're not alone. I probably owe people in this room an email too. So just wanted to say you're among friends on that one. So thanks, Wade, and good morning, everybody. So glad to be here in Grass Valley and Executive Committee. We are here to be able to get caught up on a lot of work that's been happening across the state, and particularly hear about this region of the state as well. So very happy to be here with everyone. As Wade had said, these are ongoing. We know not everybody is at every single meeting that we have, so wanted to share some of the reflections from our May session that we had in Santa Rosa and talking about the North Coast Inland region that shared with us. And I'll be really curious to hear if some of the same themes come out here, because we can kind of see in many of the regions we have the same ones. So for example, how are we aligning our visions together for resilient communities and forests? How are we accomplishing our goals through shared stewardship? We're sharing success stories, we're sharing lessons learned that we can carry throughout the other regions as well as within the region. We're understanding impacts of drought, wildfire, insects and diseases, how they're having that on forests and people, because we're all living in these communities. We are within the forests themselves. We're identifying opportunities to remove barriers. And as Wade had said, that's one of the things. How do we leverage our resources? And how do we also streamline the green tape that sometimes Wade will talk about and remove the barriers? That's what we want to do for each other. We explore ways to match funds. We're leveraging our resources together. How do you reduce administrative burdens? How do you use cross-agency tools and authorities to get work done? And perhaps most importantly, very eager to learn about you and how you're inviting everybody to participate, how you're valuing all the different backgrounds that you have in your region, in your groups, and really coming together to look at the solutions that we collectively can work together on. So as all of these really start maturing, I'm really curious to learn how we apply our knowledge, our resources, our authorities, and overcome these challenges that some are long-lived. We've been living with them for a while, but we can find ways to really overcome them. So again, this year has brought us a mix of good news for large landscape treatments. We've had some successes. We recover from the last few years of very devastating fires, as we all know. We've got further challenges with new fires and drought. Certainly I've welcomed resources to, you'll hear about from North Yuba Project, Cerro Project today as well. We've learned more about the Stanislaus, giant sequoias in southern Sierras, big flat community on the North Coast in Butte Valley and Siskiyou County. We're going to hear about some of those. I've traveled to several forests this year and really been learning a lot of post-fire recovery, interagency efforts that are coming together from the Lassen, the MODOC, the Plumas, certainly the Tahoe, the El Dorado, looking at Jeff Marcellet sitting right here in front of me, as well as on the Sequoia. So we're seeing all of that really, as Wade had said, so many activities across the state and the region, really looking forward to it. So, and fewer acres have burned so far, but I don't want to underestimate or diminish the impacts, because we have had them this year too. We are still in fire season, fire year, I would say, but very thankful that we got some moisture, very thankful that we've got some cooling temperatures, and it goes in waves. We all know what California is like, but very happy to have that. We're hearing that mosquito fire is certainly coming under control, certainly learning more about that. And we also have a lot of great examples of how our fuels treatments have made such a difference. Being able for our firefighters to really go in there and being able to have different techniques, different tools to their ability, because we've done these amazing fuel treatments on the ground. So I'm really looking forward to this meeting, exciting to really jump into these activities. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Joe Tyler, to be able to talk a little bit more about our treatments.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Tyler. I am the Director and Fire Chief at CAL FIRE. This is a time of the year to reflect on our successes that have made a difference so far this year. Now, of course, recent weather has moderated our activity, whether it be rain across the central and northern California areas or the remnants of Hurricane K that came across Southern California and moderated some of the fire activity that we've had. But it's been a busy time and will continue to be a busy time. And as Jen just said, we are in a fire year, not a fire season. We have certainly had fewer acres burned this year than in previous years. Just 366,000 acres have burned now. Just 366. That's still significant. But compared to 2021 at over 2.5, in 2020 at over 4.3 million acres, there are successes in 2022. Now again, moderated by Mother Nature or the sheer efforts of forest resilience and home hardening on the landscape. Being able to take those resources that have been put in place have really made a difference in 2022. Now, we have had some significant fires this year, whether it be the Electra fire in July, the Oak fire in Mariposa County in July as well, and of course, probably one of the most devastating fires for infrastructure and residences, the Mill Fire just recently in Siskiyou County. And then most recently, the Fairview Fire in Riverside, and close to home here, the Mosquito Fire at over 76,000 acres right now. And to my knowledge, is the largest fire thus far in 2022. Now, it's with great remorse that we have lost the lives of 9 citizens this year. But our efforts must be starting to pay off when we have 876 homes that have either been damaged or destroyed in 2022 compared to the thousands in these previous years. And so we took a new approach this year and concentrated even further on this. And while we had 876 structures that were damaged or destroyed in all the fires of 2022, there are 2,120 structures within the fire footprint that did not burn. Whether that be by luck, whether that be a contributor of home hardening and defensible space, citizens are starting to do things better than ever before. Now, likewise, the administration has provided significant investments to California at all levels to be able to provide fire prevention, fire suppression, and forest resilience. As it relates to treatments that are being done right now, we have significantly, collaboratively, all of you in this room, increased the number of acres to try to meet our goals into the future, to see real results occurring on the landscape. And we can do better, and we will do better together and collectively. Just this week alone, as I was talking to Don just before we started, with this moisture that has come in, we are starting to see some green up and opportunities. And CAL FIRE has historically been known at fire suppression, and we are continuing to improve in our forest resilience, prescribed fire, and vegetation management as a whole. So this week alone in Tulare County, we are doing prescribed fire activities. In San Mateo, Santa Cruz County, we are doing prescribed fire activities. And today in Sonoma County, we are burning there as well. Working with the Trex community, moving into the Klamath, over 60 projects that we're going to work collaboratively together to try to achieve. This is all a part of a goal of all of us collectively trying to meet and exceed the goals that we've set upon ourselves and the administration has set upon us. Now, as Jen and Wade said earlier, here are some successes that we've had. On the McKinney Fire this year, thinning and fuels reduction projects significantly moderated fire behavior to protect the communities in the Wairika area, Etna, Fort Jones, from that fire moving into that area. On the Washburn Fire, Forest Health grants helped mitigate and protect some of the giant sequoias there in the community of Wawona by the work that has been done on the ground. And on the Electra Fire, as I mentioned earlier, the Pine Acres fuel break has protected the communities in that area. And in January, we had the Colorado Fire, one of the first large fires that redefined and reminded us that we were in a fire year on the Big Sur coastline, where we ran into the Palo Colorado fuel break, which also moderated the fire activity. Now, it's occurred in smaller areas as well, and I'll use one particular example that's close to home, the Pleasant Fire last month that burned here locally. An ember created a spot fire almost a mile away from this fire, and it dropped within, luckily, the North Fork American River fuel break instead of dropping into the North Fork of the American River. And that fire was contained within that fuel break until aircraft and ground resources could get in and mitigate that fire. We have examples that are outside of fires where we have the Camp Butano Creek Girl Scout camp, where forest resilience efforts are making families feel safer about their Girl Scouts going to camp. And of course, as I said, it's really about all the efforts of everybody in this room that are going to change the landscape in California. So as I look ahead, I just want to thank everyone for doing their part. We can't do it alone, we do it collectively. And I appreciate your time of being here today.
Yeah, Joe, thanks so much. And so important to point out the progress that we're making. And you, more than anyone else, would say this is not about, ever saying mission accomplished because it's going to be, constant work, but it is about recognizing that local leaders, local efforts are driving these projects, and in many cases they are making a difference to protect communities and keep fires small. So that's really important to note, that the efforts that you all are engaged in are showing and demonstrating success protecting communities and landscapes. So I'm excited to jump into the meat of the meeting, but I want to ask any other colleagues here on the executive committee if they want to share any thoughts before we jump in.
Sure.
And Don, maybe introduce yourself.
Sure. Don Hankins with the Indigenous Stewardship Network. Actually, I can say that now because after our last task force meeting in person, the big task force meeting, we actually incorporated with the Yurok tribe. So we are now up and running as the Indigenous Stewardship Network, supporting the efforts across the state with tribal stewardship around forest fire and other aspects of that. And I just want to share a couple of thoughts. One is that the opportunities of working with partnerships, I think, is really fantastic, as has been mentioned here. But the space that I think the task force and the direction that the state is going is really serving as a model, not only within our state and nationally, but even internationally, in terms of how we work with Indigenous peoples. The language around those relationships is starting to change. And I feel that this work that we do on the task force is helping to be a catalyst to that. So I think that's a really important takeaway from what we're doing. In terms of work that is happening on the tribal side, we have about 8 projects currently working across different areas of the state, supported by the Regional Forest Fire and Capacity Grant Program with the Department of Conservation. We have other projects that are in the works, using private foundation dollars, ultimately partnering in with a lot of these efforts that are happening around the state. But some that I'll note that are happening as we're sitting here today, one in particular is Indigenous Women's Treks happening up on the Klamath River that is kicking off as of yesterday. And so it's exciting to see.
And what is TREX for folks that don't know it?
Sorry, yes, thanks. Prescribed Fire Training Exchange is something that the Nature Conservancy has started a few years back, and we've kind of adopted it and molded it in a slightly different way here in California by putting a different flavor to it, so to speak, of making it locally based and doing it maybe over a slightly longer time period, where it used to be like 2 weeks dedicated. We make it a little bit more flexible. But that TREX, I think, has about 150 people that are involved in it, drawing in people not only from tribal communities, but also other women to build that leadership and capacity for women in that space. So I just wanted to highlight that. We've got other TREX that will be involving tribal participation in Lake County and also in Butte County coming up too. So lots of good things happening. I just wanted to highlight those things.
Thanks so much, Don. And for those who are not following this, one thing we need to do more of is to get safe, managed fire back onto the ground. This is low-level fire that was practiced by tribal communities in California for thousands of years that, again, keeps small fires from becoming big, catastrophic, destructive fires. And we do that with the leadership and the indigenous knowledge of tribes and work across the state. So we're seeing a sea change at CAL FIRE in terms of getting more prescribed fire on the ground, and we're also seeing all of these decentralized efforts to train up more leaders that can get prescribed fire across the state, which is a really big deal. Stacy.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, so I'm Stacy Corliss. I am a member of the Mono County Board of Supervisors representing the Mammoth Lakes area, and I am here on the executive committee with the Rural County Representatives of California. We are 38, I'm looking at Stacy Heaton, 39 county member, it's growing. We'll run out of counties pretty soon, but 39 member advocacy organization that represents California's rural counties in Sacramento and DC. So I think really it's the local government perspective, and as my fellow executive committee member and colleague James Gore of Sonoma County would say, our local government role here at the task force, I think, is to provide that ground truth. How is this working at the local level? But I am a resident of the Sierra Nevada, so I want, even though my home is almost 200 miles south and east of here, I want to welcome you all to this region, and I'm so pleased that we'll hear about the great projects that are happening here. I really think of the Sierra Nevada as both the heart and the backbone of California. Not only a place where the source of important natural resources like water. I'm at the headwaters of the Owens River, a water source for the city of Los Angeles, famously. But really important human resources and human connections, not just our Sierra Nevada communities. We're probably one of the most sparsely populated areas of the state. But what the Sierra Nevada means and what our forests mean for millions of Californians and people around the world. There's a real spiritual and personal connection that people have with our iconic places like Mammoth Lakes or Lake Tahoe or the Lake Basin in Plumas and Sierra counties. And I think it's important to remember that human connection. I think recreation is something near and dear to my heart, and hearing about that later, maintaining how do we do this work and integrate access and people into these really, really important forest health and community protection projects. So, I think the Sierra Nevada highlights, and you'll hear about it more today, is the incredible challenge of multi-agency partnership, particularly with federal land management and ownership. In Mono County, for instance, almost 95% of the lands in our county are federally owned. But we're overcoming those challenges through the work of the task force. There's so many incredible things happening, but as we all know, there's just absolutely no time to waste. And in my opinion, as a county supervisor, not enough money that we could spend or that the state could invest in this really, really important work. And the Sierra Nevada is the most urgent, important testing ground for the innovative integrated plans and projects that we're hearing about today. So thanks.
Stacy, thanks so much. 2 points I draw from what you just shared. One is, obviously, California is a huge state. What works in the Sierra Nevada doesn't necessarily work in Southern California for wildfire resilience or the North Coast. And what may work in the Eastern Sierra may not work in the foothills. So one thing we're committed to at this task force is moving around the state. So as Jen mentioned, we were up in Sonoma County at our last big regional meeting, and then we're going to be down in Southern California at the beginning of this year. So today we're talking about what's working here in the Sierra Nevada, and frankly, what could be working better towards supporting your efforts to build wildfire resilience. So most of the day is a deeper dive into the Sierra Nevada. The other key point is this task force is all about breaking down silos. The federal government owns and manages over 50% of California's land. State agencies like CAL FIRE have an important role to play. Local counties, critical. But so do tribal governments and tribal communities and non-governmental organizations. This task force is all about trying to break down silos because Lord knows wildfire does not know political boundaries. So that's what we're really focused on today and through the work of this council or this task force is to really break down those silos towards getting stuff done. So speaking of that, let's introduce Patrick Wright, who is the director of the task force.